Hello, everybody, and welcome to Pivot Point DFS presented by FanDuel on the Believe Network and also part of the Old Man Squad Sports Network. I am your host, Keith Cork, and I'm here to give you a recap of how we did in week 7, which wasn't great, unfortunately, and to give you my top plays for the upcoming week 8 in the NFL across the action. So let's get into it. Let's start off, first of all, talking about how we did last week and what we can take away from it. We always want to try to review, what happened and where we can learn. And we'll go through this pretty quickly. I mean, I think you guys at this point pretty much get the gist. We've been at this for 2 months almost at this point. This will be 2 months after this week. So here's the top lineups for my contest. For the SPY, we had Bo Nix, Jonathan Taylor, Kinshawn Junkins, Cortland Sutton, A.J. Brown, Rashee Rice, Trey McBride, Luke McCaffrey with a 0, interestingly enough, and the Panthers defense. Definitely was not considering last week Broncos stack, and it wasn't. This lineup was not doing well until the fourth quarter of that game, which is really interesting. Obviously, Kinshawn Junkins, I was all over. Jonathan Taylor, all over. No issues there. Rashee Rice, I was kind of wavering a little bit. I ended up playing him in half of my lineup, so no issues there. A.J. Brown, I did consider an Eagles stack, which I left on the cutting room floor, unfortunately. So, Trey McBride was of interest to me once we knew Jacoby Brissett was going to be playing the QB position. Didn't end up with, I don't think, any shares of him, but he was definitely on my radar. And then Luke McCaffrey here was obviously a pivot off of the guy I was on, which was Chris Moore. Chris Moore did score some points, and he was cheaper, so a better play there. But obviously, I didn't come out with the $25,000 this person did. So I think that they ultimately are taking the win on that one. So I probably should share my screen. Sorry about that, guys. Way to go. For the screen pass, we have Bo Nix, Kinshawn Junkins, DeAndre Swift, Cortland Sutton, Michael Pittman, Troy Franklin, Trey McBride, Jonathan Taylor, and the Browns defense. So this person leaned more heavily into the Broncos stack and thus scored more points. They had 12 more points than the person that won the SPY, which is interesting. DeAndre Swift was another guy that, I was all over, was talking to you guys about last week. And I had a great game, as you'll see here in a minute. Ended up being in my SPY lineup, but unfortunately the other picks around him were not very good. Michael Pittman was somebody I had some interest in because I had interest in the Chargers receivers. So, somebody I was definitely looking at, but didn't end up, I don't think, with any share. Well, I might have had a share of him. I'm not sure. We'll see here in a minute. But here's the chalk. Here's the most top-owned players of the week. Again, when I'm talking about chalk, that's what I'm talking about, who the top-owned players are. Kinshawn Junkins came in at the very top with 55% ownership. Bad weather there. Makes total sense. I was on him too. Ended up getting 3 touchdowns. I wouldn't say he had a great day, honestly. Not on the ground. He wasn't necessarily killing it. But he did get those scoring opportunities. And honestly, the game was over by halftime. So, I'm not really sure they really needed him to do a whole heck of a lot. So I'm not too worried about it. Jacory Crosky-Merritt was next up. Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall, Saquon Barkley, and Javonte Williams round out our top owned. Yeah, I'm kind of upset at myself. I've been such a Jacory Crosky-Merritt denier all offseason, best ball season, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, I started to jump on the bandwagon as it becomes more and more clear that this might be the play that is going to go under-owned was my theory there. As I thought people were going to be more on Breece Hall, Javonte Williams, some of these other guys. And it turned out that he was chalk. He was the second highest owned running back on the slate, and he absolutely crapped the bed. So that was probably my biggest miss of the week, unfortunately. For the wide receivers, we had Rashee Rice. No, I mean, over 50% owned. That's insane. I really can't believe. It's a little bit of luck, right? He got the touchdowns, which touchdowns you can never really project, never truly project, especially for the Chiefs. I mean, they're gonna throw it to Kelsey in the end zone. They're gonna give it to Kareem Hunt when he's healthy. I know he might be banged up this week, which is interesting. They might give it to Pacheco. They might give it to any number of people. Hollywood Brown, who I believe he did catch a touchdown in this game. So they'll even throw to Noah Gray. Obviously, they've done that in the past too as well. So a little bit of luck there that he did score those touchdowns. If he didn't, And he almost scored a third touchdown too, which he ultimately didn't end up getting. But it was such a good matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders that, I mean, it makes sense that people are rostering him. I was wavering back and forth. I couldn't outright fade him. I couldn't get to that point, but I did end up having a few contrarian lineups where I didn't play him, and obviously that didn't work out for me. But CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Chris Moore, which is the guy I was on as well, as I was telling you, Cortland Sutton, Chris Olave, and Luke McCaffrey were the chalky wide receivers. I don't know, guys. Luke McCaffrey, I would have, if I would have done my podcast at a juncture where people were talking about playing him or whatever, optimizers were spitting him out, I would have probably steered you away from that. There's no way I was going to play Luke McCaffrey. I'm sorry if you did. QBs and tight ends. The QBs, we've got Dak Prescott, Jaden Daniels, Patrick Mahomes. Those are the top three. A lot, really concentrated ownership. All those guys were about 13, 14% owned and higher. Lots of concentrated ownership at the QB position, which is a little different from previous weeks. Tight ends, we also had we had more tight ends to choose from for chalk. There were more tight ends that people wanted to be on. Zach Ertz, Mason Taylor, Michael Mayer, Trey McBride, and Tyler Warren. I talked about all these guys last week. None of these guys are a surprise to me at all. The top performers of the week: Bo Nix, Justin Herbert, Jackson Dart, Jalen Hurts, and Patrick Mahomes for the QBs. Nice. Jackson Dart was only 0.48% owned. Yeah, I never would have played Jackson Dart. Jalen Hurts, as I said, that's what kind of the miss there. I ended up playing a Eagle stack in a free entry, so I ended up getting like $5 and pick 6 credits, which great. I didn't win anything. I wish I would have done that, obviously, in one of my actual contests. For continuing with QBs, we had Dak Prescott, Drake May, Daniel Jones, and Jacoby Brissett go off. Yeah, Jacoby Brissett was interesting for sure. I almost considered going with him as well. Wasn't really on these other guys, though. The running backs, we had Jonathan Taylor, Kinshon Judkins, DeAndre Swift, Javonte Williams, Josh Jacobs, Cam Skattebo, Kyle Manangai, and Ramondre Stevenson. Interesting Kyle Manangai. I think it's a fluke. The Bears were absolutely destroying the Saints on the ground. Weather was a little bit iffy there, which I'll talk about here in a minute as well, because I actually ended up stacking the Bears. And of course, I did watch that game. But yeah, I'm not like buying into a Manangai breakout or anything like that. Season long, I think you probably made a mistake if you went out of your way to go pick him up, like spend a lot of fab or something like that. I just think they were just absolutely destroying him on the ground. There was opportunity there. Manangai capitalized, no doubt about it. Maybe he gets a few more snaps as a result, but it's DeAndre Swift's backfield still, so I'm not too worried about it. But yeah, pretty interesting. Nothing really too shocking outside of Manangai and the running backs. For the wide receivers, we had Devontae Smith, Keenan Allen, AJ Brown. So 2 of the 3 were Eagles in the top 3 there. Chris Olave, CeeDee Lamb, Jordan Addison, Xavier Legette, which is really interesting. Nobody owned him at all. Rashee Rice and Michael Pittman. And then the tight ends, we had Oronde Gadsden, which is on everybody's top of their free agent waiver wire this past week for season long. Trey McBride, Jake Ferguson, Daniel Bellinger, Tyler Warren, Tucker Kraft, and Theo Johnson. So, man, 2 Giants tight ends making the top scores there this week as well. Very interesting for sure moving forward. I'd say the tight ends pretty shocking, but also very low ownership. So it shocked everybody. It wasn't just me. It's not like I overlooked anything there. It's just that, some tight ends just randomly went off, which is the tight end positions is so difficult to navigate. But Gadsden is definitely an interesting guy, up and coming here. I had him in my showdown lineup that ended up cashing on Thursday night. So interesting guy for sure. And then, kind of the usual suspects. You got Trey McBride, Jake Ferguson. Ferguson, man, when is he going to come down to earth? He cannot keep doing this. Whoa, why does he keep getting away with this? At some point, he's going to stop being such a fantastic fantasy guy. And then Tyler Warren and Tucker Kraft. There's really no surprises there. 11 out of the top 33 plays had double-digit ownership. That's 33% as compared to 38% last week, 33% the week before, 24, 43, 20. percentage in the weeks prior, respectively. 2 out of 3 of the top owned QBs hit 3x value. That's compared to 3 out of 4 last week. 3 out of 6 of the top owned RBs hit 3x value. That's compared to 2 out of 7 last week. 2 out of 7 of the top owned wide receivers hit 3x value. That's compared to 4 out of 10 last week, and 3 out of 5 of the top owned tight ends hit 3x value. That's compared to 0 out of 3. Pretty chalky. Yeah, 47.6% of the top 21 picks pictured had 3x value. So, definitely more of a chalky week than last week for sure. 10% higher. Only 37.5% hit 3x value last week, and then 48.3, 45.8, 50%, and then week 2 was 29.6. So definitely the chalk hit, at a rate that was consistent with before last week. Last week the chalk kind of missed, right? But this week the chalk hit yet again, and that's been kind of the trend, right? We've seen chalk hitting pretty much weekly here on the season, outside of a couple weeks here and there. We had super concentrated ownership at QB, and it was mostly right. I think that was the biggest thing. And for me, I ended up going a little contrarian with my QB plays, which really bit me in the butt. So I didn't want to play Jaden Daniels. I know that. I wanted to fade him. And, turned out to be the right call because he didn't really blow it out of the water. But the guys I went to just kind of crapped the bed. So I had the right game stack. I was saying I wanted to stack that Colts Chargers game. I was calling that. And that turned out to be, I believe that's where the Million Makers got their winning stack from. But Daniel Jones, I stacked him with, I think it was maybe Pittman, but I know I brought it back with Quentin Johnston. I was really high on Quentin Johnston, but unfortunately, I just didn't have the right pieces in that game to really stand out. So my chalk calls from last week: Patrick Mahomes, yep, he was. Jaden McDaniels, yep, of course. Or Jaden Daniels, sorry, and Dak Prescott, yep. Caleb Williams, I thought would be higher owned. I think the weather got people off of it. That was kind of a development that happened, a little bit after I recorded the podcast. So I'm not going to beat myself up too much about that. He was 8.2% owned, which was the 4th highest. So he's right beneath these guys. So these were the top 4 QBs owned. So, definitely not wrong, but I will count myself wrong because he did only come in at 8.2% owned. Javonte Williams was chalk for sure. Josh Jacobs, no, he was not chalky, which kind of surprised me. Only 5.3% owned. Josh Jacobs is doing everything for that Green Bay Packers team. He's going to score consistently. I don't know why he would ever be 5.3% owned. Had I known that, I probably would have had more shares of him. Breece Hall, yes, he was. Bill, of course. Kenshon Junkins, yes, that was the easiest call of the week for sure. DeAndre Swift, I thought he would be higher owned. No, he only came at 7.2% owned. And I don't know, the weather shouldn't affect that at all. I think people are just afraid to roster him because he hadn't looked good in previous weeks. But there you go. Previous results are not indicative of future results. Keep that in your mind. Previous results are not indicative of future results. That is exactly the game we're playing, and that is what we're trying to capitalize on. Javonte Williams, yes, he was. Justin Jefferson, yes, he was. Rashee Rice, yes, he was. Of course, that was another really, really easy call. Chris Olave, yes, he was. Trey McBride, yes. Taylor Warren, yes. And Michael Mayer, yes. They all were chalk. So pretty spot on. My Bears guys were not chalk. And I think I kind of understood that as the weekend progressed because I ended up going to that stack, understanding that it was a contrarian stack. So I had said on the podcast they were chalk. Over the weekend, it looked more and more like they were not going to be chalk. I thought they were still good plays, so I ended up playing those guys. Didn't work out for me, but it's the right mentality. It's the right way of thinking to win one of these things. So my top plays, yeah, Kenshon Junkins. I mean, just easy call. Nothing you can do about it. Bad weather, blah blah blah. Scored a bunch. We're good to go there. Matthew Golden, I soured on him over the weekend also because we had the news that I thought Deebo Samuel was going to play when we did the podcast, and we had news that Deebo Samuel was ruled out. So I actually came off of Matthew Golden. I put this on my Twitter, so please do follow me at DataDrivenOMS at DataDrivenOMS on Twitter. So I did say that I was coming off of him. I ended up trying to force him into a couple of lineups just because I had said he's a top play of mine. And, didn't really sink me because I still like his price point at 4.7K. But unfortunately, he's just not getting those red zone targets. So I don't think the ceiling's there. So I think I have to rethink that. I don't think I have to be on Matthew Golden anymore. Although I do like his game, I do think he's a decent guy. But it's funny because I say things. I say like like last week I said Chris Olave and CMC. When you start looking at these guys as floor plays and not ceiling plays, what happened this week? They absolutely crushed it, and it ended up being absolute ceiling plays and made me look like a fool. So yeah, at the moment, I'm sorry, I'm Matthew Golden. Not too high on him. Quentin Johnston also didn't really do a whole lot. Luckily, he caught the touchdown pass, which means he did kind of meh, but wasn't a fantastic call. But I do like the ownership I got in these guys. Only 8.8% owned for Matthew Golden and 11.3% for Quentin Johnston. So I do like that aspect of it. My key pivots I ended up playing. Justin Fields, oh God. Only 4.9% owned. Massive ceiling. I have no problem with it, but yeah, he absolutely was terrible. Now he's probably sat in favor of Tyrod Taylor, but Tyrod Taylor's banged up, so maybe he plays again. Guys, I might have to go to him in a large field GPP just to kind of throw it out there and see what happens because, man, no one's going to play him after that absolute crap show. The Jets are just such a frustrating team, man. Like, where's the RPOs? Where's the design runs for Justin Fields? Like, what are we doing? Like, Aaron Glenn, what is going on in your head, man? Like, just throw Justin Fields on the bus and say it's his fault. And now we're moving on. And I don't know, man. The Jets are a freaking mess. So Rome Odunze was a key pivot I played as well. Did terrible. Only 5.1 fantasy points on 6.6K salary. Weather might have affected that a little bit, but just ultimately didn't really get a whole lot of targets. And then Mason Taylor, sorry. This is like the second or third week I've done that in a row. Sorry about that. Mason Taylor was my other guy, 18.6% owned. He ended up coming in higher owned than I would have figured. He was more chalk than pivot for sure, so not even really a pivot, so that's a bad call on my part. I probably should have come off of him, but that Jets offense just so anemic, so bad that they only had 6.1 points. So I'm even the fact he mustered 6.1 points in that environment is still impressive to me. So I still like Mason Taylor as a talent, but yeah. Gosh, man, those Jets are really, really terrible. Min cash line for the SPY this week was 163.06. That's compared to 155.82 last week. So it did come up. Last week, if you remember, it did fall for the first time in the entire season. So for the first time in 6 weeks, it had fallen. But here in week 7, we came up again a little bit. Not too much, but just a little bit. This week, we have a lot of teams on bye. I think, 6 teams on bye. So it's going to be, I think, another lower scoring affair, but it'll probably end up somewhere around this week's and last week's. We saw some pretty high scores in week 5, week 4, but I think it'll be around that like 160-ish range, I think. But yeah, Screen Pass 166.64 was the main cash line, so a little bit higher there. And that one also went up a little bit. I went off book a little bit more as more information came out over the weekend. So yeah, I didn't exactly follow every single thing I said in the podcast just because new information did come out. Unfortunately, my go-to, what I ended up doing was a Raiders stack because Jacoby Myers wound up being ruled out as well. So I went with Che Tucker and I went with Michael Mayer in one stack, and that didn't work out for me. So that was an example. The other example being, dialing back on the Matthew Golden because Deebo Samuel was ruled out. So we had Chris Moore and Jalen Lane was out there, and I guess McCaffrey. I didn't really consider him at all. Zach Ertz was a big play, obviously. So yeah, I ended up pivoting a little bit off that because we did get some major, injury news on Saturday and Sunday. The Indianapolis Chargers game stack was totally the right call. Just had the wrong pieces. Mason Taylor it was costly, and so was Corey Merritt. Those rookies really sunk me this week. Unfortunately, I was all over them. I had them in many of my lineups, and they just both really they produced 10 points total between two players. That you can't overcome that. And I still didn't do terribly. I almost overcame it, but it's just so insurmountable. I have to get so lucky to overcome something like that. So it was just kind of dead on arrival. And I was not worried about the weather for the Bears game, which is right because Chris Olave caught 2 touchdowns. He had a 50, 60-yard touchdown pass catch from Spencer Rattler, the rattlesnake. So So I don't think the weather was like terrible, and it cleared up during the second half. But I tried to stack the passing game, and that was the wrong move for the Bears. Obviously, their running game was the one that really took off. I did have some DeAndre Swift, but I also had a Dunze and Caleb Williams. I had some I think maybe one lineup with Colson Loveland as well, and it just wasn't good. So here's my performance here in the SPY. Didn't win anything, obviously. Caleb Williams was my QB. As I said, I shifted over to a Bears stack. I had DeAndre Swift and Rome Dunze as well. In this stack, DeAndre Swift was great, obviously. Kinshon Junkins was my other running back. So I ended up with the right running backs, as you saw before. Kinshon Junkins and DeAndre Swift were kind of the right running backs to go, but I also had Ja'Cory Croskett-Merritt in my flex position as a third running back, which was definitely not the call. CeeDee Lamb was another play. He had 25 points, which is fine, no big deal. I did end up being on Chris Olave because I wanted to have a bring back in that Bears game. And Olave, as I said before, safe floor play. He almost had 100 receiving yards, which would have been even bigger, but he did have 2 receiving touchdowns. So really big day for Chris Olave, which almost got me to the money line. As you see, I fell about 20 points short. I had 142.08 as my final score. Mason Taylor was my tight end, and then the Patriots was probably the easiest defense call. Anyone that's playing the Titans is the easiest defense call on every single DFS slate. They were only 3,400, so it was really easy to get to them. So no reason not to, honestly. For the screen pass, I did have one screen pass entry that did end up hitting the money line. It hit the min cash line, so nothing too exciting, but at least I got some of my money back. Daniel Jones was my QB, and I had Jonathan Taylor as well. And I had Michael Pittman. So I did have Pittman, Jonathan Taylor, and Daniel Jones. Kinshon Junkins was my other running back because I had him everywhere. Matthew Golden was one of the guys I shoehorned into this one, which was just a bad call. I shouldn't have done that. Quentin Johnston was there as well as a bring back because he was playing against the Colts. Mason Taylor had everywhere, basically. Crap the bed. Javonte Williams, as I said, pretty decent. Not a bad day. 21.8 DK points. And then the Patriots defense, of course. 169.22, just over the main cash line, about 3 points over the main cash line for that contest. So, I ended up getting a little bit of my money back on the week, though, down 115. So that makes me overall only up $85. Guys, this week, if we don't win, we are in the red. We are back to playing with our own money. And we don't want to be doing that. But you know what? The good news is I feel better about this week than I have in like 3 weeks. And as you can tell, I feel better. I have more energy. I'm able to talk now. All 3 of my kids, this is a fun fact, all 3 of my kids have hand, foot, mouth disease right now. I'm pretty sure, like 99% sure. Dreadful, terrible stuff. Do not recommend this to anybody. So, not out of the woods yet in terms of having my sanity back, but I am feeling a whole heck of a lot better compared to previous weeks. So there is definitely that. Man, and also basketball tonight, guys. I fell 0.25 DK points below the money line. I know we're not talking about basketball here on this podcast. I'm going to spare you guys that, but just wanted to kind of lament there for just a little bit. But let's talk about week 8 and what I'm seeing out there. Like I said, I'm feeling pretty darn confident about this. Now, of course, there's going to be some kind of, we're in that part of the season now where it's like every week we have the, different guys being ruled out or whatever, benched, blah, 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 wanting trades, requesting out. There's a lot of stuff going on at this time, this juncture of the season that we have to stay on top of. You have to be monitoring the news. It's a lot more intense now than it was, a month ago. That's going to continue up until the trade deadline at the very least. And then, even past that. So the rest of the way, we're pretty much going to be dealing with this kind of thing where it's like, there's going to be probably 1 or 2 major guys on Saturday or Sunday that's going to get ruled out. So just keep that in mind. But let's talk about right now, as it stands. And the latest news for today before I hopped on this podcast was A.J. Brown being ruled out. Why? We don't really know. So, maybe he voices concerns a little bit too much. Maybe this is like a message they're sending to him. Maybe he's actually hurt. Not a whole lot of news about that as far as I could tell. I did carve pumpkins with my kids, so maybe there was news in hour or two before I hopped on here. That I just happened to miss, but it's kind of a weird thing. So obviously he's ruled out, so that kind of throws a wrench into things that I was looking at. But ultimately, I think I was able to adjust pretty quickly here before we hopped on. So let's get into the chalk here at the QB position. Number one, and I don't really understand this at all, guys. Number one chalk at QB is going to be supposedly Lamar Jackson. It seems that people are going to be rostering him. So what I do get Tyreek Stevenson's going to be out for the Bears. I believe Kyler Gordon's going to be out as well. So, it's it's a weak secondary for sure. It's a weak defense overall. Lamar is not like a guy that throws strikes, though. He's not like a QB that I'm like, oh man, he's going to sit in the pocket and absolutely deliver to these guys. And he's coming back from a pretty lengthy injury. Where it might affect, it's a hamstring injury where it might affect his mobility and his ability to get around in the pocket. So I'm not like super psyched about Lamar Jackson. I'm not going to end up on him at all. And that's not because I'm a Bears fan. I'm like against him. It's because I have more interest in other parts of the Ravens that we'll talk about. Hint, 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 as if you don't know what I'm talking about already. But yeah, I'm not in on Lamar Jackson. I mean, if you want to do it, yeah, cool. Stack him with Zay Flowers, stack him with, if you're really, really bold, stacking with Mark Andrews, who's had a terrible season thus far. Who else can you play? You can play DeAndre Hopkins, I guess, or Rashad Bateman, but I don't know, guys. I'm not feeling it. Of course, you're going to go off for 1 million points now. But I'm not in it. I'm not in on it. I'm fading that. Jalen Hurts is a guy that's been winning in winning lineups recently. So, of course, everyone's going to be on him now, expecting all the things to happen. And it's going to be even worse now. He's probably going to end up being the top-owned QB. Lamar was projecting the top-owned when I last looked, but I'm sure that Jalen Hurts is going to hop over him because people are going to jump over themselves to play Devontae Smith now that A.J. Brown has been ruled out. Has this not been updated yet on DraftKings? Or just you need to reload? Here, let's see. There we go. There, he still hasn't been ruled out yet. Let's see. Now I'm curious what it even says. Yeah, it says he's been ruled out. They just, I guess DraftKings just said, we're not updating our app anymore. But yeah, he has been ruled out. So Devontae Smith is going to be somebody that everyone's going to flock to. So obviously, they're going to want to stack him with Jalen Hurts, who's, like I said, has been on winning rosters in 2 of the last 3 weeks, I believe. So yeah, I'm not over the moon on that one. I think it's definitely going to be chalky. If you're playing cash, sure, go for it. 6.6K is not bad for Jalen Hurts at all. So I have no issues with it. The other guy I think is going to come in highly owned is Baker Mayfield. And, the reason for that being is that everyone's going to see he's 6.4K. And, I don't mind it. They're playing against the Saints. So it's a really, really good matchup, of course, as well. You always want to play people against the Saints. But the main reason people are going to be on him is because there's going to be no Mike Evans, no Chris Godwin. So like Buka is going to get a bunch of targets. Shepard's going to be a nice little pivot off of that. Tez Johnson is, still pretty underpriced at only 4.3K, and people are going to be on him as well after seeing what he could do last week, scoring touchdowns and all that. So, people want to play these receivers. They're going to, and of course, there's also Kate Otten at 3.4K, which we'll talk about later. But all these weapons here that, they're going to get concentrated targets. People are going to want to get to them. And so they're going to want to play Baker Mayfield. So Baker Mayfield's going to end up being, I believe, the 3rd highest on QB. There's another guy that's borderline that might hop over him. But as it stands, I think Baker's going to be that guy people are going to naturally wind up on. For the running backs, can we just talk about Jonathan Taylor, man? Jonathan Taylor is now 9.5K. Last week, 8.8K, I believe, was his price. Yeah, 8.8K. So it's a $700 jump, and that's crazy. I mean, as you can see here, he jumped 500, he jumped 300, now he jumped 700 more dollars, and his price just keeps going up and up and up. And man, I mean, he could still hit value, just the way that things are going, in the fact that they're playing against the Titans. It's almost too good to pass up. So I have no problem going to Jonathan Taylor at all. The only issue is the price, right? The price is so prohibitive, and there's so many guys in that mid range that I think are really good on this slate, that it just prohibits you from getting multiples of those guys, And there's a couple of value guys, and there's one value guy I'm really high on this week, but it's feasible. You could get there, but I'm not like going out of my way to do it. But he is going to be highly owned. The other guy is, of course, Christian McCaffrey, which we saw a ceiling game out of him last week. This is the first time he's really looked like the old Christian McCaffrey. He was not getting the yards after contact, but this week, or this past week, he absolutely went nuts. 129 yards on the ground. As you can see, I mean, his yards per attempt per average here went up. 3.2 in week 6, 5.4 in week 7, 2.6 in week 5, 2.9 in week 4, 3.1 in week 3. I mean, he just was absolutely killing it on the ground for whatever reason. Big part of that could be because of the return of George Kittle. Maybe George Kittle unlocks the ceiling for Christian McCaffrey, and maybe he is a good ceiling play, but he does get a tough matchup here in the Houston Texans, who have been absolutely on fire on defense. I mean, they've been incredible. So I'm not jumping out of my way to roster him either, because there is another guy we'll talk about here just right now, and that is my one and only Mr. Honey Bijan Robinson, Bijan, who knows, however he wants to say it these days. But Mr. Bijan Robinson is 8.8K, $200 less than Christian McCaffrey, and just gets an absolutely smash matchup here against the absolutely befuddled Miami defense. The only issue with Bijan is he doesn't get the red zone equity, right? He doesn't get the red zone touches. Tyler Algier does, but the good news is that Tyler Algier is banged up. I can't remember what his specific injury is. He's questionable, though, with a hip and a knee injury, it looks like, according to Josh Kendall of The Athletic. So, maybe we get lucky. And I'll tell you what, if Tyler Algier does get ruled out, you need absolutely Bijan to the moon. I still consider Bijan Robinson a lock. I'm going to have Bijan Robinson everywhere. Touchdowns or not, touchdowns be darned. I want to have all of the amazing yards on the ground, yards via catch that Bijan brings to the table. As you can see, really no misses, right? He does not had a bad game since week 3, which he still put up 16.1 DK points against the Carolina Panthers, which, as I said, we need to kind of respect that run game at this point. Man, they lost 0-30. Ugh, that was so ugly. Yeah, you never know what you're going to get with Atlanta. That's another thing that kind of makes me kind of go, but I do like Bijan, and there's no way that I think he puts up he's not going to put up a dud. He's going to give you at least that 16 that he got in week 3. My guess is he's going to at least double that. He'll probably get around 30 DK points this week, and you can pretty much lock it in. So I think Bijan is a lock for me for sure. The other guy that's going to be chalk, I don't know, guys. I'm just not sure. We just talked about Carolina and their run defense, but not Josh Allen. Sorry. James Cook. James Cook at 6.7K. You guys are not being sneaky. People out there are like, I don't know. James Cook, he might come in under own. No. He's going to be at least probably top 5 owned running backs on the slate, I would think. So you're not being sneaky. 6.7K is a nice price point, though, so I can't really fault you. There's just so much variance here. I do think in GPPs he makes sense. I mean, with the touchdowns, he falls in the end zone a couple of times. He's going to hit value for you there. Obviously, a couple of really down weeks, but before that, he was absolutely rolling. But yet again, this is a tough defense, a tough run defense. He could get the touchdown and only end up with 40, 50 rushing yards. That's on the table. And he doesn't really absolutely crush it for you, but he still does just fine. So I'm probably not for me, but I can see where people are getting that, and I don't really have a problem with it. Rachaad White is going to be another guy, and again with this, it's just all the Tampa Bay guys are going to be chalk because they are playing the Saints, and because they're missing their key pieces, and the price points haven't come up yet to really reflect that. So 6.4K for Rachaad White. No Bucky Irving again this week, should be fine. But my question is, why do that when you have the next guy on my list, which is the one and only Mr. King Henry the Third, Derrick Henry against my very own Chicago Bears. Look, why am I on Bears? Come on now. Look, 6K for Derrick Henry. I know. Look, I wanted to chop it up after that, week where he pretty much, I think, cost me an insane payday because I could have gone with anybody else in his price range and done really, really well. But I saved it. I still have that King of Diamonds. He's going to bring me home. I'm going to lock him in. I'm going to play Derrick Henry again to my detriment. We'll see how it goes. Bears defense is bad. Their run defense, I thought at the beginning of the season, more stout. You want to throw against the Bears. But they haven't been good all around the defensive side of the ball. So, I think it's a good matchup. But the thing with the Ravens really is, they're 1-5, right? 1-5, and the Steelers lost. So things are, still within reach for them with their starting QB coming back. Lamar Jackson, obviously being back, does open up more of a run game for Derrick Henry. He's more of a threat to run himself and to, actually deliver a ball to a guy on time. So, things are trending up for the Baltimore Ravens. I'm expecting them to beat my Bears. I think that's just a given. I think the Bears are absolutely due for a whooping here. And I think Derrick Henry is going to help deliver it to him. I really do. I think he's going to just drive it up there. And, I think there's going to be multiple scoring opportunities as well. So Derrick Henry is only 6K. I'm locking him in. He's a lock for me. I've got Bijan and I've got Derrick Henry. Typically, I have two locks for running back, right? And those are two of my guys. So Derrick Henry, I'm not going to play Rachaad White because I am going to play Derrick Henry pretty much everywhere. The other guy that's going to be chalk here for wide receivers. Let's move on to wide receivers now. At wide receiver, Jamar Chase, 8.1K. Pretty darn cheap, and we saw him what he did last week, which was absolutely insane. Set a franchise record, 16 catches in a game, just getting hyper focused, hyper targeted. They're playing against the Jets. It's a fantastic matchup. Joe Flacco's going to do the same thing again. I have no issues at all going to Jamar Chase. I'm trying to end up with more of Jamar Chase than not, right? I want to have him in my lineups. It is a fantastic matchup for him, and the price point's still very, very easy to fit into your lineup. So give me all the Jamar Chase. Emeka Egbuka, I've talked already about him. Don't have to go ad nauseum at this, but no Mike Evans. Another week removed from that injury. He, as I thought last week, he was more of a decoy until Mike Evans ended up breaking his collarbone. When Mike Evans broke his collarbone, suddenly they started throwing more to Emeka Egbuka. So obviously that's the game plan. That's a smart way to go about it. That's what I would do. So, he should be the wide receiver one pretty comfortably on this team. So I have no problem going to Emeka Egbuka. 7K is not too bad of a price tag either. As I said, they haven't adjusted it up yet. Devontae Smith, I had A.J. Brown in this slot before, but right before I hopped on, I switched it to Devontae Smith. But they are against the Giants, so you want to pass against them. It's a nice matchup for them. Obviously, no A.J. Brown will raise Devontae Smith's ceiling. I haven't made him a lock yet, but I haven't had a chance to really go through my lineups and see where I'm going to swap people in and out. At the moment, I wasn't really, even though I know A.J. Brown's going to be chalk, I wasn't really looking to go out of my way to roster him. And honestly, Devontae Smith's only $200 less, so I don't really know if I'm going to end up with a lot of him in my lineups anyways. I'm not super going out of my way. I think the Eagles are going to be super chalky because of the fact that they have been winning people GPPs the last couple of weeks. So, that huge ownership, you're not going to get any leverage there. And the price tag's not amazing. 5.9K, I can find a bunch of guys in that range that have a similar ceiling, I think, to Devontae Smith, in my opinion. So I'm not over the moon on it, honestly. But I think people will be for sure. Chris Olave is one of those guys that's in that range that has, as we saw last week, that kind of similar ceiling. I do still view him more as more of a floor play. Obviously, The Bears are kind of an outlier defense. Not a good defense there. So, they're able to take advantage. He did, get a lot of his scoring on, as I said, a 50, 60-yard bomb, which isn't going to happen every single week. So, I do still view him as more of a floor play, but they are playing against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, another team you do want to throw against. So I have no problem really going to him. He is coming off a big game. I'm not going out of my way to get him in my lineups. And then Zay Flowers is going to be another highly owned guy, just to stack with Lamar. That's the only reason people are playing him. So that's just kind of indicating how chalky Lamar is going to be. And I'm going to fade Zay Flowers. I'm not playing Zay Flowers because I'm not playing Lamar. I'm playing Derrick Henry. So there you go. For the tight ends, usual suspects for the most part, but there are some new names here. Obviously, Tyler Warren is going to be highly owned. They are playing against the Titans, so it's a great matchup. 5.5K, sure, whatever. I'm not like, I don't think you have to do it. I wouldn't do it. I'm not going to end up with any Tyler Warren myself. Maybe if you're doing a Colts stack, you want to stack that game. That's not one of the games I want to stack, but maybe it's a game you want to stack. If that's the case, then sure, go for it. I don't see the value here, guys. The other guy that's going to be chalk now after the latest news is Dallas Goedert, and that's more interesting to me for sure because his price point is definitely more interesting to me, 4.2K. I think I have some higher interest in some other tight ends, but I do see where people like that, and again, it's against the Giants, which is a good matchup as well. There are going to be scoring opportunities. That Buccaneers offense can hum. Baker Mayfield just absolutely slinging it down the field. So don't have any issues there. K-Dot in a 3.4K. Already talked about it. Same story with all the Buccaneers. They're just all going to be chalk this week because of the matchup and because of the concentrated targets. The other guy that's going to be a chalk tight end is, interestingly, Dalton Schultz. Sorry. Dalton Schultz going to be a chalky tight end here as well. He's interesting for sure. He's only 3.3K. So, price fell. Did score last week. Tough matchup against the 49ers. I don't have a whole lot of thoughts about it. I think it's a nice cost-saving tight end to go to. Definitely should be priced higher, judging, based on the targets he's been getting, 6'6", 6'10". But I don't know. It's not, Nico Collins going to be out for this game. Obviously, no Christian Kirk still. So they do need to throw a target somewhere. I think Jaden Higgins is going to get involved here. I do think Hutchinson will be involved. I think Jalen Noel will be involved as well. So there's a lot of different guys I think they can throw to. And Schultz will definitely be one of them. So I get where people are coming from. But, man, I don't know if you guys watched that Texas game last week. CJ Stroud was just like, there were people in his face immediately. And I know this 49ers defense is banged up, obviously missing their, Fred Warner, missing a lot of people that on that defensive side. But I still think they'll have no problem getting past that offensive line, getting to CJ Stroud. It'll be a little bit of an easier matchup for Stroud. So I'm wavering a little bit on him, right? I'm not like fading him. The price point, there's no reason to fade him at that price point. But I'm not like overly over my skis on him either. So, okay, let's get to the pivots though. And this is where I'm getting really, really excited. People are finally off of this team. Been waiting patiently in the weeds for people to kind of, just kind of get bored with it. It doesn't really work a few weeks. And so people are finally like, okay, this is not the way we do things, guys. This is not working out. Let's go find something different. Oh, okay, well, let me swoop in and do exactly what you've been doing this whole time that I wanted to do, but I don't want to be on the same island as you. And that's target this Dallas Cowboys defense, which has been absolutely atrocious all season. It's not like they've done well, in recent weeks or anything like that. They just haven't like given up as many points. They gave up 22, they gave up 30, 22. So, it's been 3 weeks of kind of, they haven't given up 40, 37, points. They've been somewhat serviceable. But yeah, this is still a defense you want to attack. And I want to attack it with a guy that's coming off a hot week, absolutely crushing it this season. From a fantasy lens, absolutely crushed it, I should say, last week. He hasn't been crushing on the season. He's been kind of up and down, but this is offense in general. This Denver Broncos team has been crushing it on the season as a whole. I do think Bo Nix makes a sense as a great pivot. I do expect him to be maybe third most or fourth most owned QB. So he's not like a amazing pivot, but he's a pivot off of the truly top guys. I don't think he's not going to come in like, some weeks we see there's three QBs at the top and they all have, 15 to 20% ownership. This is going to be more like a week where we have, a guy with 15, a guy with 10, and then everyone else has like 9, 8 for like 6, 7 QBs, and then everyone else down low has less. So it's going to be less concentrated ownership. So that's why I'm still considering him a pivot. He's probably going to come in, probably under 10% owned, but maybe he reaches that 10% threshold, somewhere around there, right? 8 to 10% probably would be my guess at this point. So I do like Bo Nix a whole heck of a lot. This is a great defense to attack. His weapons are priced really well. So I love everything about that play. Another guy I'm looking at, hold your noses, everybody, at QB. And this is a super pivot because no one's going to own him. It's going to be absolute bonkers. Tua Tagovailoa. I can never say his name right. Tua Tagovailoa is another guy I'm looking at. Not a great matchup here, but I do like the ownership edge. And I do like, I like the pricing of his receiving options is incredible. There's no Darren Waller now, and I think people are going to just sleep on that. He was out last week as well. So obviously last week was kind of a fluke. It was just a really terrible week. I don't think Tua is that bad. I think Tua is definitely better than he was last week. He's just coming off of like an absolutely dreadful, like historically bad week. So no one's going to be on him. He's going to be like 1% owned. And so I have interest in him, and you can stack him with Waddle. You can stack him with Malik Washington. You can stack him with his backup tight end, Tanner Connor. I wouldn't suggest doing that, but that is a way you can go. And then obviously you can stack him with Devine Achane, who is more of a wide receiver from that running back slot anyways. They're talking about getting Ollie Gordon more mixed in, which is fine. That just means that Devine Achane is going to get more of the passing work anyways, which is where he excels anyways. So it doesn't really matter. And they're drawing up plays for him at the end zone to catch the balls at the back of the end zone through the air, which is crazy. But yeah, I think you can definitely do that. Again, tread these waters at your own risk. It is definitely risky. The other thing I'm looking at here, I'm not, considering him a play just yet, but if Michael Penix Jr. is ruled out, I don't like Michael Penix Jr., but obviously they're playing against Miami. I want Kirk Cousins. We saw that documentary, can't remember what the name of it was, but of his past off season, that he was dealing with injuries last season, which really played into how horribly he played. Michael Penix banged up, may not play for that reason. Hasn't been really great this season, to be honest. He's been pretty meh. But, maybe a guy like Kirk Cousins comes in and lights a fire into this team, and suddenly we have, starter Kirk Cousins on our hands for the rest of the way. You never really know. Crazier things have happened in the NFL. But I am very interested in Kirk Cousins, thinking that he's going to be finally, healed up and healthy and ready to go, waiting in the wings. And obviously he's got a lot of weapons on this team to utilize. Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Casey Washington's really flashed some big playability. Bijan Robinson, of course. And then at tight end, Kyle Pitts has had a really nice season as well, quietly. He's having a really good one too. So I am very interested in Kirk Cousins, and I'll be interested in those other weapons I talked about. And of course I want to play Bijan everywhere. But I'll be interested in that if we get news that Michael Penix is out. At running back, this may be my favorite pivot on the entire slate, because I just don't understand why more people aren't excited about him. Saquon Barkley. If I'm fading Jalen Hurts and I'm fading Devontae Smith, I'm playing Saquon Barkley. I mean, he hasn't had that big game in a while. But if I want to I've got my 2 running backs I want to lock in. But if I want to go 3 RBs, I think you can very easily get to this guy as well as Derrick Henry and Bijan Robinson. Obviously, you're going to have some value options, mixed in there for sure. But it is feasible, absolutely feasible. Last big game is never this season. Week 1 he had 18.4 points. But last season, of course, we saw absolute explosive ability. He's still the same guy. This is still a very good offensive line. The issue is the only thing that is like stopping me from being like, okay, I gotta lock this guy in, is in the back of my mind, I'm like, I don't know why. I don't know why he's not succeeding, because very well he should be. It's a run first offense. That's been established until A.J. Brown opened his mouth. There's going to be no A.J. Brown, though. No A.J. Brown. Devontae Smith is there. Dallas Goedert is there. They will throw the ball. And, of course, Jalen Hurts does run the ball and does vulture the touchdowns from Saquon Barkley. But, man, I love Saquon Barkley here at 7.6K. I think he's going to be very, very overlooked. And then I'm going back, as long as he's healthy and playing, which I believe he will be. This has been kind of the cadence we've gotten all week for DeAndre Swift, where he's been questionable, limited, all that good stuff all week, and then he suits up and plays on game day, which is fine. No issues at all, right? They're just kind of keeping him, a little bit banged up, trying to keep him a little bit fresh for game day. And this is a good, the Baltimore Ravens defense is getting healthier. They're getting guys back, but still a really good matchup here. I don't think they're going to jump from being one of the worst defenses in the league to being one of the best, to being elite. Maybe they're middle of the pack now, but we saw what this Bears offensive line was able to do last week in creating those holes. And it wasn't like the Saints are like terrible at run defense either. They're a pretty middling team in terms of run defense as well, but the Chicago Bears were able to run all over them. Did the same thing to the Commanders, who are also not really like pushovers in terms of the run defense. So, maybe this offensive line just finally figured this out, and maybe DeAndre Swift just takes off the rest of the year. This is very much on the table. He's only 5.9K. I think you really have to consider playing DeAndre Swift again this week. And then a guy, I do love it. I don't know how much I get to it, but Chase Brown against this awful, awful, awful Jets team. I think, the ownership leverage here is the reason I love this play. Not because I'm a big Chase Brown fan or anything like that, but he does have, the skills here. And he did flash some potential last week in that crazy game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Of course, everyone scored well and did well in that game. But we're still waiting for him to kind of show us what he was doing last season. Will we ever get that? I don't know. But this Jets team, they might just be giving up on their head coach because, again, he doesn't make the adjustments. Who knows what the game plan is, man? The game plan is just crazy. These players seem like they've quit on this head coach. So, deflated team. It's a prime spot for Chase Brown to get right. Maybe he scores 20, 25 TK points at 5.4K. I'll take that every day of the week. So I do think Chase Brown has to be in your player pool. I love all the pivots, man. I'm going to have so many nice pivots. And because they shouldn't be pivots. I don't understand. But I'm going to go back to, again, people are finally off this team. So now I get to finally be on them. And it's the Dallas Cowboys. Of course, it's a tough matchup here against the Broncos. But CeeDee Lamb at 7,800. Will he get lots of Patrick Surtain? You betcha. Sure, fine. But if there's a wide receiver in the league that's matchup proof, he's one of the top, 5, right? Whatever it is. These guys, it doesn't matter who they're up against. They can still have big games. So, yeah, the matchup's not ideal. But if I want to play the Denver guys and I want to have a bring back, I'm bringing it back with CeeDee Lamb. Absolutely. It's not going to be George Pickens. Definitely not. CeeDee Lamb is my guy. So, I love it. I'll play him all day, every day. I'm going to have at least a couple of lineups with CeeDee Lamb as my wide receiver. Maybe I'll also have Barkley as a running back. We'll see. That's a lot of, if I want to keep Bijan and Derrick Henry in my lineups, that's a lot of cashola to lay on the table. And I don't know if I can do that. But Cortland Sutton, I already talked about it. But yeah, let's go ahead and stack him with Bo Nix. No problem there. But I will say I have more interest in his teammate. who may get the better matchups against this awful Dallas Cowboys defense. Sutton's going to get most of the attention, of course, but Marvin Mims, as the de facto wide receiver 2 on this team, is a guy that I'm really interested in at just 3.9K. Price came up a little bit from last week, but it makes sense. This matchup is way too juicy. Troy Franklin might be in the mix as well at 4.2K, but personally, I want to go with Marvin Mims at $300 less with that big playability. We've seen him make really big catches in the past, and I think that's definitely on the table here against this really weak Dallas Cowboys defense. So I'm trying to see where his longest. He had a 28-yarder, a 31-yarder last week. Actually, his longest reception last week. But we've seen him have much larger ones, 50, 60 yards down the field. So that's what I'm looking for and hoping for if I do play him, which I will. Then another guy, which I have absolutely all the love for this week. Against the pass funnel defense, couple of quiet weeks. People are sleeping at the wheel. No longer on him. His price fell from 4,200 to 3,900. Alec Ayamanor is a guy I'm going to lock in to all my lineups. I think he's going to have a big week. I think he's got, again, it's a pass funnel defense. I think he's got the great matchup here. People are going to be on Chimera DK because he had a big week last week. Maybe some Van Jefferson, probably not. There's probably going to be very low ownership of him. And people aren't going out of their way to play against these Titans receivers. But the simplified offense that they, kind of touted when they made that coaching change, it did work last week. They were able to move the ball as I was watching. Now, of course, they didn't score a whole lot. They're playing against a pretty good defense in the Patriots. The Colts have a pretty decent defense as well. I would say it's maybe not as good as the Patriots, but it is similar. So, it's not like I am over the moon about this play. I do want to play Alec Ayamanor. Will he maybe go for 50 yards and not score? That's a possibility. But 50 yards on, 4 or 5 receptions and, no touchdown, I'll still take that 3.9K. I think the price point makes it absolutely make sense to me, even at the floor that I'm thinking for Alec Ayamanor. So I've got him locked in all my lineups. For the tight end, there's some really interesting pivots here as well. I've got Dallas Goedert on here. So Dallas Goedert was a pivot, which I was looking at. Obviously, that's not the case anymore, so I got to eliminate him. But at the tight end position, I love all the pivots. All the pivots. There's so many good pivots this week, and you wouldn't think that with so many teams being on bye. But people are just so honed in on the same things. People are really looking at the smallest things this week. And you just have to look outside for one of these guys has to pop. But George Kittle at 4.5K, if you're willing to play Goddard at 4.2K, why not George Kittle at 4.5K, who is the better tight end? We all know it. Perhaps the best tight end in the entire league. Last week, put up a 0, put up a goose egg, was injured for 5 weeks before that. People forget. And he's in a really good spot here. I mean, the wide receiver, crew over at San Francisco is still very beat up. They've got Kendrick Bourne, Juwan Jennings, who they're leaning on. Brandon Ayuk's still out. They're hoping he'll come back at some point. Pearsall's still out. So there's opportunity in this pass game. It can't all be Christian McCaffrey all the time. There's another reason I'm not really high on McCaffrey, because I think George Kittle does get mixed in more here. Yeah, he's a fantastic blocking tight end, no doubt about it. And, that run game looked fantastic, running behind him. But he is also a pass catcher, and he is also an elite tight end. So I like George Kittle. I think he's a good pivot and a guy to spend up on if you can manage to find that extra cashola. Mason Taylor, I got to go back to the wall, man. After he crapped the bed, I expect him to have pretty low ownership. Is it going to be Tyrod Taylor? Is it going to be Justin Fields? It looked like, according to last week, Tyrod Taylor would be better for Mason Taylor. So if we do get Tyrod, I'm going to have more interest in Mason than if we get Justin Fields. It is a good defense to target against the tight end, which is the Cincinnati Bengals. They've been bad against the tight end position for years now. And so, he gets that going for him. He is questionable. I'm expecting him to play, though. I'm not sure what's going on with the Jets. They listed him questionable, Garrett Wilson's out. And then, of course, Tyrod Taylor's questionable. So, who knows? There's a lot up in the air I think, Brees Hall, I think also questionable as well. So a lot to kind of monitor in that situation. Maybe we get Brees Hall out. Then I think I have even more interest in Mason Taylor, but he's just 3.5K. I would definitely go back to that. Well, and then the last tight end, pivot I'm looking at here is my very own Colson Loveland. Cole Kmet already ruled out, not going to be playing. We saw Colson Loveland on the field a whole heck of a lot last week, and we're going to see him on the field a whole heck of a lot again this week. 4 targets last week. He's 3K. So really, it's one of those, if you really need to save money and spend up elsewhere, you need a desperation tight end. This is the guy I would go with for sure. There are cheaper tight ends out there, but none with better opportunity than Colson Loveland. So I would go ahead and lock him in if you need a cheapo guy. So game stacks I'm looking at this week. Obviously I'm looking at Denver, Dallas. I don't think this is going to be this should be the game that everybody stacks. To be honest with you guys, it is the game with the highest total on the slate. But people are finally off of attacking this Dallas defense. They want to do something different because it hasn't been working the last couple of weeks. So, it may be the highest stack game, but it's still going to be lower than it should be, right? We're still getting kind of like the edge there, right? Like that's how we approach betting, right? That's how you should approach betting. Is the bet is telling you there's a 50% chance it's going to happen. If it's plus 100, you think there's a 58% chance it's going to happen. You have an edge. You have an 8% edge on that happening. So even if they come in at 15 to 20% ownership, maybe they should be 25% owned, right? I think that we can still stack this game just fine. And in my single entries, I think I'm going to do that. In my multi entries, I probably won't. I'll be looking at the Chicago-Baltimore game. Not only do I like Derrick Henry, and I could even go with a Lamar Jackson stack if I wanted to. I'm not going to do that, but you could if you'd want to. But this is a nice game to stack. I think it's going to be competitive. I do expect the Bears to lose, but they're not going to lose sitting down. Ben Johnson doesn't roll that way. He does put up points and scores points, and both of these defenses so far have been pretty bad. So I think people are going to overlook this, and it's not going to be a popular game to stack. And the Chicago side of the ball is really not going to be popular. So that's really going to get your edge. You can play Swift. You could play Monanga if you really want to get risky. I would advise against it, but if you really want to go that way, go ahead. Roma Dunze is due. He is absolutely due for a big game. I would not be shocked if Roma Dunze has another 2-touchdown game here. You could play DJ Moore. You could play Luther Burden. Not super interested in those guys. I think if you want to play one of the wide receivers, just go ahead and play Roma Dunze. And of course, you can stack him with Caleb Williams, who's only 5.6K, which is a really nice. And he did have a really bad week last week. He played terribly, no doubt about it. But the Bears won. I mean, they were killing it on the ground also, so they didn't need him to do a whole heck of a lot. So there's that. So I like that game to stack. And then the last game I want to talk about stacking here is the Tampa Bay New Orleans game. Again, I don't think this is too crazy, but it is a game that for sure could get wild, could get competitive. The Saints have been competitive with teams even while losing, which is really interesting. But yeah, there's a lot of nice pricing on the Tampa Bay side. And then, of course, you can bring it back with a Chris Olave. You could bring it back with a Devin Neal if you really want to get freaky. No Kendry Miller. And Alvin Kamara has been pretty bad thus far this season. They did say they're going to increase his snaps. You could bring it back with a Taysom Hill. Do you think Taysom Hill is going to get goal line touches in this game? Because I do. I really certainly do. 2,900. So I think you can stack that game. I'm not, outside of stacking that, I'm not going to play any of the New Orleans guys probably outside of Olave, but there you go. My plays, though, these are the guys I am locking in to roughly 65%, I believe, or higher percentage of my lineups so far. I think I've made 9 lineups thus far. Of course, I will continue to tinker and continue to make lineups. But so far, I've got Derrick Henry. You guys know that. So far, I've got Bijan Robinson. You guys know that. At wide receiver, I'm going to be bringing back my likely Broncos stacks with CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb. Love him this week. Love him. And then the other guy that's going to allow me to get to the other folks I was talking about, 6K plus, that I need to have everywhere is Alec Ayamanor. Those are my 4 locks for this week. Those are the guys I want to get in a majority of my lineups, if not all of them. And I will say, at this point, I've got Derrick Henry, Bijan Robinson, and Alec Ayamanor in all of my lineups. CeeDee Lamb, I have a few where I don't have him, and I go other directions, but I do have him in a vast majority of them. So there you go. And of course, when I have him, CeeDee Lamb, I have those Denver Broncos stacks. So that's it, guys. That is my takeaways for the week. And again, it's Friday. Things will change. It's Friday night, 11:30 p.m. Things will change Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, Sunday morning. So do check back. I will try to post on Twitter at DataDrivenOMS for the things that I'm swapping up. You know, hey, I'm off this guy. Hey, this guy's looking kind of good. Hey, I'm starting to get more interest in, you know, this guy or this stack or whatever, or this game environment. So make sure you are following there. Do hit a like or subscribe on the YouTube channel that you're watching on, or on the podcast, whatever feed that you're listening to, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., etc. It goes a long way. Leave me a review. Let me know how I'm doing. I would love to hear from you guys. I know I've been kind of under the weather for like a month plus, but I'm starting to come out of that. You'll see me a little bit more energetic, which is great. Fantastic news. But hey, guys, until next time, go get that money.